All right. We are back here at XTcast, the official podcast of XT.com. And today I wanted to bring someone amazing, someone really cool. You might have got a chance to check out the podcast episode with Nikola Stojanow. He introduced me this guy, Zdravko. Sorry, man, I butchered it. But he got a really interesting project, protocol. He's working on some really interesting use case. And as you know, here at the XTcast, we are all about how cryptocurrencies and blockchain-based solutions are going to revolutionize the internet, information, and money. So, but this one is literally out of space. So, before we dive into all that amazing, juicy information, Zdravko, welcome to the XTcast, and please introduce yourself and also tell us a little story, your origin story, how you got into this crazy world of crypto and blockchain. Like, why did you even bother entering this crazy space?
Yeah, so thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure. The story is actually quite. It's not that amazing, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it in retrospect. But basically, what I'm doing is almost entirely focused in space, like in the space domain, because this is something that I've always had an interest for. Like not just what's out there. Just the curiosity of what's going on out there in the cosmos. Like what's on the surface of planets, what's populating this whole space in terms of objects and phenomena, but also how do we actually get there and what are the implications of getting there. And this is something that I've always, pursued. And this has been the focus of my company for the past 3 years, Sphere Technologies. But I've worked in this domain even before this. But as for how how I actually got into blockchain and crypto. It happened maybe like 2016, maybe mid to late 2016. I was already familiar with Bitcoin at that point. Hadn't paid much attention.
Okay.
And I wasn't really, I knew what it was. I knew the value proposition of it in its basic form, but at the time I had something like other things in mind. But around that time I stumbled upon Ethereum and started digging in, what are smart contracts? What is this? What is this? And it was kind of like a rabbit hole. I was like reading all this stuff that I was trying to make sense of. So, okay, decentralizing systems, why would you want to decentralize something? Like, why would you want to make a smart contract? Why would you, want to use the entire, this entire setup to solve a problem? And I figured out that this is actually, there is something here that's going to be like very, very perspective. There's something that's going to be able to solve a lot of problems. At the time, I wasn't understanding really how much the potential is. But I started in as both on the side of reading what the technology is and what it does, and started, actually buying Ethereum. So right. I still remember the times when Ethereum was like $10.
Those good days, man. Wow.
yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, okay, this thing is worth $10, and at the time I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm paying a little bit too much for this. It's just some, it's kind of like it's a digital asset, but I don't know what the implications of it will be. So back at the time, I was just buying some small amounts, reading about Ethereum, looking into all these new cryptocurrencies and projects that were coming up, and there was such a diversity of projects back then.
Right.
And I was, the same curiosity that's getting me into what's happening into space is what started getting me into what's going to happen in this space. What's going to happen with cryptocurrencies, with blockchain? What is it going to lead to? And at some point, I thought, okay, can't we have like an intersection between the two? Because obviously, on one side, we have an industry that's very, very centralized, which is the space industry. It's a super centralized industry, that requires that requires a lot of trust between whoever is engaged in this industry, between the
yeah.
stakeholders.
Right.
Yeah, and then on the same time you have like blockchain technology, which kind of solves a lot of issues related to trust between parties and trusting somebody that you don't know. And I figured out, okay, there might be some very interesting intersection here. You can actually potentially solve some very interesting issues in the space industry with blockchain technology, and that's how I actually started focusing on building. So because I was already working on something that's within the space industry, but I figured out, okay, maybe we can synergize the two technologies and provide something that's very, very new, that opens like completely new possibilities for the space industry in this way. So that's kind of the story, like that's the background of everything I'm doing. But back at the time, I really had like no idea where things would get.
True.
When I first started reading about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, I had absolutely no idea. And little by little, started crystallizing that this could be something massive.
You hit the spot, man. Yeah. First of all, thank you for sharing that story. When you talk about space and stuff, the little hamsters in my head started wearing, like a Jedi robe and Sith robe. I was thinking, like, man, like, who knows, like, build stock, like starships or battle cruisers and stuff. Sorry, I just went on to this kind of like this imagination, but. What is really interesting about space tech and also the blockchain too is there are incredible possibilities, incredible opportunities like never before. And thank you for, first of all, mentioning about the space industry being super centralized. Like, obviously, the stakeholders are different governments. And of course, it is a tedious process and requires a lot of trust. And this is something, of course, sensitive data too, right? So I guess I can imagine that, So I love the fact that you are using blockchain as a way to meet that intersection. So I don't know, that I just find it like really fascinating. So I guess let's start with. Because I got a chance to learn a little bit of FIRA technologies and Ephemeris Protocol and Homeport. So could you kind of like educate me, like talk to me like I'm a fifth grader, all right? So, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's would be happy to. So essentially, what I founded was back at the time was Sphere Technologies. So it's a spin-off of an aerospace engineering group I was part of. And the goal of Sphere Technologies is to basically build infrastructures for making space more available to everyone. And the starting point for this is to make data more available to everyone. And as part of this, we essentially designed and started developing our first product, which is called Homeport. What Homeport boils down to is making it easy for space companies to get data from satellites. Because when you're a space company, usually a lot of them, what they do is they send satellites in orbit so that they can gather data. And they basically sell this data back here on Earth.
Nice.
So this brings you to the question, how do you actually get the data from the satellite? And to get the data from the satellite, you basically need a pretty big antenna with some hardware underneath. It's something that you call a ground station. So the purpose of Homeport is to provide a virtual network of these ground stations spread across the globe, and making it very, very simple for space companies and much cheaper to actually get their data, so that they can focus on basically getting the data. So that's the purpose of Homeport.
Gotcha.
And the catch here is that Homeport has a smart contract element, which in the long term is going to make it possible for people to join with their own stations. If they want to build or buy their own station, they can join and they can provide service. And that's the product that we spun off with. We went through the Eternity Starfleet Accelerator back in 2019. We started building the product. We've gained some traction. So it's something that's it's a pretty sophisticated platform because there's ground stations are just like these absurdly complicated systems. In fact, they're actually more expensive than a satellite nowadays.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but you can actually set up something simple even for smaller money. But the ones that we work with are pretty expensive. Although the trend is like going down, prices are going down, they're becoming more affordable, which is hence the bet on a lot of new stakeholders introducing their own ground stations. So that's Homeport. That's basically a platform that makes it possible for space companies to deliver data much faster. What is Ephemeris? So like I mentioned, there is a smart contract element within Homeport. Ephemeris is this broader tokenization framework, which is designed precisely in mind to put Homeport or other applications or satellites or like marketplaces for specific products or anybody who wants to build something within the space industry. Ephemeris is this framework which puts everybody in one place on one token. So if somebody wants to come and build a marketplace for, data, they can build this on top of Ephemeris. And in that point, you actually start growing an ecosystem. But the focus of Ephemeris is on actually providing satellite data. So going a step further, not just taking in the data, not just receiving it, but also allowing a channel for delivery of this data to users, where you have the similar issue of actually trusting users, of controlling access to the data, because some of this data is, at the end of the day, it's satellite data, is sensitive. And Ephemeris seeks to solve this. So we kind of break the ground station model that exists so far. And with Ephemeris, we want to sort of break or reinvent the way data reaches consumers. Because satellite data, specifically Earth observation data, is just, like something that's something that can basically transform every business out there and Web3.
Okay. Because, even for focusing on, satellite data or EO data, which is Earth observation data.
Yeah.
Now, I guess a question like, some of the folks would ask me is, now, obviously, okay, some of the satellite information, the data, it is sensitive, but I guess we're talking about, say, like sensitive as in like military kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I'm assuming. Okay, but there's also other, isn't there like other kinds of data that I guess a lot of us as normies or like regular folks, we do need a lot of that data, right, for our regular life. So could you kind of elaborate, like what kind of data are we dealing with, which will really transform things to a whole new level?
Yeah. So thank you for this question, because I think that's one of the central items that need to be discussed more nowadays. So Earth observation data is this extremely versatile type of data. Like you can literally do a ton of stuff with it. So one of the basic, of course, uses of Earth observation data is for agriculture, because nowadays the sensors that you have up there in orbit have such precision, and you can get them so like in a frequent manner that you can actually estimate yields from like individual plots, and you can say, okay, I'm going to make like 30% less from my plot of corn than I did last year, or I'm going to make 15% less or more from my cotton or wheat or whatever it is. You can actually, and this is just agriculture, you can measure stuff like soil moisture. You can measure the health of forests.
Really?
Yeah, you can literally like take a picture of a forest and say, okay, this forest is way too dry, or you can even define like different species that you have in the forest depending on like what spectrum you're looking at. You can track marine vessels. You can estimate how much oil do you have in like oil terminals in tanks, like in ports. There's just so many things that you can actually do with this. It's insane.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of applications. When you mentioned about agriculture, just to give you just a little bit of history, right after high school, I moved from one desert in Dubai to another desert in West Texas. So in West Texas, the most prominent crop or plant would be cotton. So I remember seeing, some of my friends were like, farmers and stuff. So they use John Deere tractors. And I think what was interesting was they did have access to satellites, within their, the tractor cabin. So it was sort of semi-automated. So I'm assuming they are using satellite data or some sort of equipment in coordination with that, like satellite tech in some way, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so maybe what they had in tractors was more like a navigation. I don't know. I mean, I've never been in a John Deere tractor, but essentially the way this is used specifically in agriculture is precisely to identify whether you have problems with the crop. And in the case, for example, with cotton is very water intensive, so you need to irrigate that thing a lot. And you have to figure out early on whether you have problems with the crop, and that's where earth imagery actually helps you, because you on the image you can actually identify like whether parts of your like the plots you're growing, whether they're dry, whether they're in good health, whether like they're ready for harvest. You can do a ton of stuff when you look at things from space. And this is the main one of the main values is precisely this, because you literally get eyes up there, and these eyes can see, like, to put it in like in a simple way, you can see in all the colors that you can imagine and all the colors that you cannot like see. And they give you a ton of information that you can process in many ways and extract a lot of meaningful insights out of this.
Interesting. No, because I was just thinking some of my farmer friends back in the States. So I guess I can see, because I'm trying to connect like the farming business with agricultural business, and definitely you could with this valuable data you could really improve yields, you can improve operations, and like really plan things out early too. So I think you can also say, I guess obviously you can save a lot of money as well too. So and also I like the part where you talked about oil terminals. So here being in Dubai, Middle East, oil is a big deal. So I think to have that eagle's eye, or I guess space view eyesight, you can kind of, with of course advanced tech, the tracking technology, I think that'll really help organize traffic and help predict movements. I think there's a lot of business potential.
Exactly. One of the things that when you have this kind of data is actually decisions even for financial institutions and for trading, because what is commodities trading? I mean, a lot of the commodities are like crops. You want to know the price of wheat. You want to know the price of cocoa or something else. And you can have two ways of doing it. Of course, one of the ways is you look at the chart, which is like a backward-looking indicator, because you're looking at the trends of events that have already happened, and you try to do like a little bit of financial astrology on the basis of this, like what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks based on how the lines are going, and you start drawing these like insane like charts and projections. Or you can have data that actually tells you, okay, so we have this X amount of oil across the 10 major terminals that operate in the Northern Hemisphere. The trend that I'm observing over the past couple of days is this. So this is going to lead you to a conclusion that's a lot safer, and it's data-based, that you may have a spike in the price, or you may have a blockage, like somewhere along the pipeline, somewhere along like the delivery pipeline. And this is going to give you a much better insight into what kind of financial decisions you want to make. And that's precisely what we're looking to do with Ephemeris Protocol. We want to make it possible for this data to be available for decision making on Web3, because Web3 projects right now, they work within this closed sort of bubble, like with internal data that's almost entirely on-chain. If you want to solve a real world problem, you're going to need real world data. And the best real world data that you can get is something that you can basically take a snapshot of the entire planet. And that's one of the best types of data that you can have. And that's what we want to bring to Web3, of course, to all possible businesses, but specifically to Web3, because I believe in this decentralization principle. And I believe that the more stakeholders we have, the more opportunities we're going to have. And it's best for this space to have, like access to this type of data and to have a much better availability of this data.
Yeah, no, I love that. Hey, first of all, Zdravko, first of all, thank you for your service. I mean, this kind of stuff, like, never imagine that, like, because I'm thinking, like, a regular person like me can have the opportunity to have this kind of access to this information. Maybe in a small way, sure, in the grand scheme of things, it may mean nothing, but when you add other people joining in and trying to be part of the movement, I think it can be really a game changer. So, I mean, this is, would it be fair to say, like, you're kind of like way ahead, I guess, because this idea is really novel. Because for me, I have come across a lot of projects, but I have never come across, first of all, a project that's based on space tech. So that itself is, threw me off. So I didn't know how to, like, fit in my little mental box, So I'm sure, has anyone ever kind of like mentioned that to you, or?
Well, in general, what we started building is something that's on the basis of an actual use case. Like we figured out precisely how do we solve a space problem better with blockchain, and then we figured out, okay, we can also solve Earth problems with blockchain by helping like Earth problems get a better space-based solution. So I don't know. I've never really thought about this. I've always thought about this in the process of, like, in the form of, like, what is the issue? Can we actually solve it with blockchain? Do we need blockchain? Because in a lot of issues, you don't actually need blockchain.
Yeah, true.
But in a segment like this, I haven't noticed, like, I've seen some like efforts elsewhere to potentially, like put some stuff on chain. But like the vision that we have is we have to present it and sort of like sometimes even preach it, although I hate the word, but because the trend that we're looking is very interesting. So space technology is something that you still require a lot of capital to join. So there's a very high barrier to entry.
Okay.
And this means that all these infrastructures that are built, all these, like we already mentioned, you can a lot of things can actually depend on space data and space technology. You already have GPS, like the John Deere tractor, it's using GPS. Marine traffic is depending more and more on space data. And one day we're going to find ourselves in a situation where a lot of these infrastructures, a lot of these space resources are owned by like just a handful of entities, precisely because of the high barrier of entry. And it's my personal belief that it shouldn't be like this, because it's not healthy. You shouldn't have an entire planet dependent on 5 or 6 companies supplying your space data, your navigation or whatever. You must have more stakeholders. And for that to happen, you need a system that can onboard these stakeholders and provide the trust that's ultimately necessary, because, like we already mentioned, these are sensitive products and data sometimes. And this vision, like this identification of this specific problem is not something that, like I've read elsewhere, and it's kind of, I've seen it mentioned in a couple of like places, but maybe it's, like I'd say we're still in early, which is, I think it's good. But the thing is that we have to start working on this now. And I think the timing to start working on applications that, like merge blockchain and space is now.
Okay. Yeah. No, because currently right now, a lot of folks are focusing on, like gamify, metaverse. I guess, for me, I'm more excited about like privacy and digital payments and stuff. But I think it just never dawned on me, to look up, like to go, So I guess maybe I'm so caught up with so many things happening in my little space. So that's what I think is really it's really interesting. So I mean, it's kind of interesting to see from your side. You literally have a not bird's eye, like a space eye kind of point of view.
Yeah.
So speaking about space or bird's eye point of view, I wanted to just touch upon Web3. What are your thoughts about the current affairs in Web3, where we at now, and what you hope in the future is going to take us?
Yeah. So maybe I'm a little bit still sticking to the original idea that I had about blockchain back when I first discovered this technology in 2016. I do think that the potential here is tremendous because the world is becoming, it's already insanely digital. Like people are pretty much leading a good chunk of their lives online, which inevitably means that you're going to have to bring them into some kind of a system. And what we've seen so far is kind of like a legacy system, like a single company operating with the data, with the profiles, with the activities of billions of people. And that's it's not healthy for the same reasons it's not healthy to have critical infrastructures like those in space, depending on one or two companies. But it's also not healthy because, you could potentially have a lot better solutions that are out there, but that are basically suffocated by just having one player. So I think Web3 is it's like an amazing trend, I would call it, because it shows the way that it's possible to build entirely new forms of interaction, making business, funding business, and so on. And anything that helps progress or break down legacy models, in my opinion, is good because it's a sign that things aren't stale. Of course, what we have right now in Web3 is kind of it's still driven by hype cycles. Ultimately, you have like stuff like GameFi. Like a little bit earlier, we talked specifically about this. People trying to build games because of the tokenomics or because of trying to somehow monetize the gaming experience, which is what games are not at all about. Games, movies, entertainment, these are things that people want because they want to escape, like reality. They want to get transferred into this amazing like fantasy world that gives them ideas, hopes, gives them some room to dream. They don't want to go in it because they earn money. They have a job to earn money, or they build a business, or So there's a couple of things in Web3 that currently I don't really appreciate, which is precisely all these games that are based not on lore or mythos or giving people the feel good thing that is ultimately going to be the ultimate draw-in for users in gaming, at least. But they're based more on some monetary incentives. So that's, but that's kind of hype, it's going to die down. Just like some of the stuff that's in DeFi, like yield farming and so on. Okay, that's parts of this are going to survive. Like the most viable projects and models are going to survive, but ultimately the vast chunk of this is, it's temporary. And I think, because this is not the first, top of the cycle or bottom of the cycle, whatever you want to call it. I think gradually we're starting to crystallize more and more use cases that are related to real world uses. I think we're precisely on the verge of making it possible for Web3 not to become just this construct or trend, but actually something that allows more stakeholders to join more processes and have something that's sustainable and viable. So I'm really hopeful about it. I don't necessarily subscribe to most of the hype. some of the stuff that I see is actually pretty irritating, because because it's a waste of resources. A lot of these things are just a waste of resources. But it's a good stepping stone. It's a good way to learn what's needed, what's not needed. So I think it's like, as a natural process, I think it's on the right track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would agree on that. I guess, there's a lot of hype and stuff, and
Yeah.
I remember like a couple of months ago. So and I guess as a marketer, I know sometimes we abuse the crap out of some of the the marketing stuff. So I meant in a general sense. So
Yeah.
but you know what? But you know what the good thing is, Personally, for me, it's just my opinion in terms of economics, economy.
Yeah.
We are in a recession, there's obviously, things have gone down and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it has removed a lot of the grifters, the weak hands.
Exactly.
And right now, of course, the market's going to a lot of correction. So now we have like some good projects, and what you mentioned, they have a utility, they are solving
Exactly.
an actual problem in the marketplace, and which will have a long-term value in the long run. So I guess, now the smart money is like, looking at different areas. Oh, wait a minute, there are different opportunities. And so I guess, I guess it's, I know it's still early, but I think this is really a good time for the smart money and other people to take the narrow path, or look at a different point of view. And I guess that's the reason why, I'm so grateful I connected with Nikola when he told me about this. Hey, check this out. So because I guess personally for me, just to have a hot-hour conversation, as a kid, I love space. Like, I'm into Star Wars or Warhammer. I know not many people know about Warhammer, but if they knew, I think it would be kind of crazy. So So, oh man, I was just blown away. The ability for humanity to go to space and colonize different planets, and it's embrace new technologies and stuff. And so I don't know, I want to be a space pirate, so I think that's the reason too. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with this, but I mean, the point I was trying to say is your project has some incredible value, incredible insights. So that's what I'm kind of curious about that. And also want to talk about Web3, how I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, how can we get more people, the average Joes and Janes, to get access to this kind of data? How do you see that's going to take place? How can they take advantage of it?
Yeah. That's actually a really, really good question, because it touches upon one of the main points of basic Earth observation data, which is, so what is Earth observation data? So let's say, let's put it in a simple way. So a satellite image is kind of like a specific type of rock. You get some kind of rock, and but at the end of the day, if you're a business, you're not going to have a need for this. You want somebody to make you a little figurine or some kind of item out of the rock. You don't need the rock itself. You're going to need somebody to carve something for your use case out of that rock. So it's the same with data. The picture itself, the image itself, the data that comes in is something that contains loads of information. And this information, you can synthesize different conclusions for different businesses or different clients. This is where the weak link in Earth observation right now is. Things kind of get into a bottleneck at the point where they become accessible, where the insights become accessible. So a lot of businesses, they don't have analytics like data analytics or GIS branches within their business, because it's expensive. Analyzing this data is expensive, not just because it requires people who are skilled in this, but because it actually requires stuff like computing resources. It requires algorithms, a lot of things that are not within the range or the focus of average businesses, much less like your average person.
Sure. Yeah.
So the point to get it there and to get it more accessible is to specifically to be able to extract something that's valuable for the individual user, for a small business, for a small farmer, and this is where much of the potential lies. And this is what we're trying to do on Ephemeris, to make it possible to create data feeds from the images that feed into smart contracts, that feed into applications, that feed into businesses, so that they can actually focus on the business or the project or whatever they're doing without actually having to go through the entire data science process of looking at a couple of pictures in infrared from I don't know, from a plot of wheat and figuring out, okay, like the difference between the red spectrum and like the near infrared spectrum in this image and the other image means that I'm losing X amount of like chlorophyll here. Nobody wants to do this. Like they want to know,
interesting.
Is the plot, like getting drier, or is it becoming, like more moist, things like this. So the point is to be able to bring in, for the mass user, that's what's interesting. Of course, you have an entire segment of industries and businesses that are going to want to make their own analytics, that want to monetize, let's say, their expertise in processing data. There's going to be businesses that, let's say, they want to develop artificial intelligence to process and automate this thing, so that you don't have to manually analyze images, but you can just run them through an AI, and it just identifies the differences between images for you, kind of like you do it on, like all these algorithms that, like you scan your documents or something like this. It's pretty much in a similar principle. So I think that's the main thing, creating a channel that provides stuff that's a lot more relatable to business and individual users. And once we have this, at that point, it's going to be a lot easier for people to make sense of what's going on across the globe, to build business cases, to make a smarter business, and to make smarter business decisions.
Okay. Those are really good answers. Because I'm trying to focus on the business side, because I think that will relate to a lot of people, and I want the community and also other people are watching to have an understanding. Hey, look, like there is a business opportunity, and there are tools out there that can make your business faster, easier, and reliable. So, like one example, I guess I want to do an exercise with you. Like, let's talk about, say, gold mining or something like that. Are we I know they have to dig underground and stuff, but do we have the satellite technology to kind of like, say, scan the area? Is there like some sort of we use some sort of like a spectrum tool to see a particular plot of land? And I know, so I apologize, I'm just kind of drifting off, but I was trying to come up with like say I'm a mining company, can I use this technology? Do they use this kind of technology to plan things? Or,
it's used in mining as well, identifying resources. So there are use cases there as well. Based on what kind of data you're using, you could get a hint of what's underneath the surface. There's several methods to do it. One technology that's also kind of getting more into use is so-called synthetic aperture radar, SAR, which is basically not a picture, even though once the data arrives, you can see it as a picture. But it's basically a radar that can change, can detect changes within like very minute changes in the rock constitution, in what comprises like a specific mass. And this is something that you can use. For example, you can also use optical data. So there are use cases in mining, of course, also in identifying if you want to set up a mining operation, to potentially map out where you're going to distribute everything that you need for the mining operation. So there's plenty of use cases. Almost every economic vertical out there has some kind of use case that may benefit from this data, which is why it's important to actually get this data to as many businesses as possible and to educate them.
Yeah. No, actually, Zdravko, the reason I brought up mining is because I have some friends also in the mining space too. So I understand very well. It is a very expensive proposition. So, like
Yeah, yeah,
if they're going to commit to, like a particular area, look, they have to throw in a lot of money. So, it makes a lot of sense to have the right data and also some of the testing analysis is also legally binding. It states that,
yeah,
like this area has this vein has this much gold and stuff. So yeah, so like I guess that's why I brought up the mining thing. So
yeah.
because I know it is expensive, so just wanted to kind of give my audience and also for myself too. Like, okay, I can use this satellite technology connected to the real, not real world, but like the business world over here. There is a connection. So yeah, and I know that this thing is expanding fast in terms of the numerous applications. So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
we covered all that stuff, man. Is there anything you would like to share that we haven't brought up or that needs my attention or the audience attention? Like, is it?
Um, Honestly, it's a very, very broad topic. I mean, specifically when it comes to using data, um, like it's something that people need to know a little bit more about, especially in the Web3 space, because I think the Web3 space is like I mentioned, it has a lot of potential, but if it really wants to start solving, like real world problems, what it
Yeah,
needs is a real world input. It's not necessarily EO data. EO data is not good for everything. There's a lot of other
sure.
things that would be more suitable if you like get drones or if you have an IoT network or something else,
Yeah,
or even user data. User data is also really really useful. So, but whatever it is, I do believe that the space needs to start using more real world data. And to focus on problems that are relevant to people, because this what we at the end of the day, this is what we see. We see a lot of projects that have a very good, very interesting technology, supposedly do something really good, but they cannot reach the average user because they kind of stick to this bubble. And the average user, like still the vast majority of people, they don't own crypto, they don't understand what
yeah,
blockchain is, and a lot of
yeah,
these people are not going to understand what it is, and they're not going to own crypto. Like they want to know how like a regular, like everyday problem they have could be solved in a way. And
yeah,
a lot of these projects can solve these problems. The point is to like actually get to the user. And I think this is the most important part, because the cycles are going to continue. We're going to keep learning from the faults that happened within the previous cycle, or what not to invest
yeah,
in, what to invest in, what kind of technology to look into. But as the cycles go, it's a fact that like conventional industries are adapting, and they're kind of chipping away at like some of the value propositions that Web3 can come up with potentially.
hmm
Uh,
yeah,
Ultimately they will not be able to secure the entire value proposition, because a lot of these industries have absolutely no interest in adding more stakeholders. They have the opposite interest of centralizing more.
mm,
But in terms
yeah,
of like stuff like convenience or something else, they may like gradually adopt some stuff from crypto and blockchain,
yeah.
and just leave out the other stuff, and just gives them power to keep centralizing. So I think it's important that the Web3 space starts learning that it needs to solve real world problems, and not
Gotcha.
problems
Okay.
that are within the space. Because games are cool. Like everybody wants to play games. Like DeFi is cool. Like all the unbanked individuals that are out there, you can provide genuine
Sure.
solutions for them. That's amazing, and
Right.
it should be
hmm
like that. But there's a lot of problems that remain not covered, and I think this is the next key thing that Web3 needs: sources of data, making the data actionable, making it convenient for
Mm,
projects to
right.
use, So in my opinion, things like, like Oracle's data delivery protocols, data storage protocols, data processing platforms, this is the kind of stuff that's needed, the kind of stuff that needs to be paid more attention to. And that's my belief that the next, like everything that's done from this point on, that should be the focus. Infrastructures, data delivery, solving in an actionable way, solving real world problems. That's what I believe that the next step should be.
All right. No, those are really good points. No, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I guess one of my main takeaways, I guess for Web3, I guess from my side, I'm saying like we do have a messaging problem, for connecting the regular Joes. Trust me, I think a friend of mine, he was telling me like the only time he will buy an NFT is when you guys shut your mouth about NFT. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So like, I know. So yeah, it's a very interesting time to be in. So I think it's good. I like the part you talked about, focusing on oracles and storage, like Chainlink or maybe some sort of like storage. I think I'm thinking of like say like Filecoin, like IFBS or some other storage related stuff.
Yeah, there's plenty of solutions. There's Storj, there's Filecoin. I know there's Chainlink, Supra. On computing, there's Kudos. We actually work with Kudos specifically on finding new ways to process the data. Like turn it into actionable stuff. Like things that people can use. So there's a lot of platforms out there that serve an amazing purpose, and I do believe that it's the time that we should start using more such infrastructure, just make it to support cases that basically solve problems that people can relate to. And as you say, there's a lot on NFTs. We used to hear a lot about NFTs. I mean, NFTs are great technology. It's a very interesting technology.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff, I do believe that they do have potential to transform some of the ways in which like artists present their work to the world, definitely. But there was just so much like also hype over there, like making NFTs out of like absolutely trivial things. But like it's kind of showing, because like what's very interesting in crypto is that it's a very good like an indicator of how people's attitudes change. Like you don't have this exposed that much in any other industry. Like crypto and blockchain is where you have the clearest illustration of how people believe a hype. They think this is going to change the world. Then this drops, and then nobody believes in it. And this is typical of people, like do for a lot of things, like not just then. There's a lot of things that are like this, like whether it's like some kind of I don't know, movie or a piece of work or something like this. It's how it actually works. But what's amazing about crypto is that you actually see it exposed and integrated into market movements, and you actually see this curve and this human like attitude towards things, and this attention span woven into market movements, which is quite insane and very interesting to observe, actually.
Yeah. No, those are really good points. Yeah. I can definitely agree to that. But anyways, I just realized we're running out of time. But before you head out to the vast space, to go where no one has gone before, all that jazz. I guess do you have like some sort of do you have like a roadmap in place, or I guess this is like any future stuff you're working on in the future?
So actually the entire focus that we have right now is on setting up our data distribution platform. So an initial version of basically a system that distributes Earth observation data, that you can actually buy Earth observation data. and to extract some basic insights from this data. And also by the end of the year, we do plan to deploy the initial iteration of a ground station network. Basically for next year, we have some pretty big plans, like start expanding the network, start expanding the user base for the data. And yeah, eventually we think of stuff like, like space DAOs, sending satellites up there, but like that's a little bit further down the road.
All right.
But overall, yeah.
Okay, I guess the last but most important question for me is, I know you guys are working on a space staff or funding like a satellite and stuff. Any plans to have a space staff for building like a battle cruiser or like a capital ship?
We could actually set up a DAO to fund like some kind of space battle cruiser or something like this.
Yo, please. Yeah. Look, I'm not excited about that. I'm pretty sure we could raise capital for this. I'm pretty sure. Like
Imperial Star Destroyer DAO, like Star Destroyer DAO, something like this.
Yeah, I mean that's more like Star Wars, but I you know me, I'm more like a Warhammer kind of guy, so I'm thinking about like I don't know, like a Space Marine boy or something. I don't know. Something classic. I'm a classic guy.
Yeah, there's plenty of opportunities. I mean, we've already seen everything, so I wouldn't be surprised if we unironically went in and decided, let's build like something like this. That if it's formulated in the right way, like people are gonna come, because like we already discussed, if somebody wants if somebody feels good about something, they're gonna in on it, because people want to have an escape platform. They want entertainment than anything else, and space actually provides for amazing entertainment. Like you're a Warhammer fan, I'm a Star Wars fan, Mass Effect fan, so
no, agreed. Yeah, I mean, look, it was a great escape. I mean, like, it definitely does. I think that just the concept of space, I think it connects people of all backgrounds.
Exactly.
Really, right? So I can see that. So like, I think it just shows a world of promise.
Exactly.
Like just future possibilities. Like to do things. So I think in some ways, like, I do hope that with blockchain and with space tech, I think we can get a lot of collaboration from people from all walks of life, and who knows, something beautiful can take place, and maybe have some sort of unity in many ways too. So I mean that's kind of like my my belief.
Exactly that, and that's how it should be. Because people are interested in space because it gives them this idea of like a future where things are a lot better, a lot more peaceful, a lot more cooperative. And I believe in this too. A lot of people who are like into space believe in the same. And I do believe also that if we want to materialize this kind of future, we do need the proper framework to do it. And I do believe that through blockchain, Web3, like we can actually achieve this, and it's available for everyone. So I think this is the ultimate intersection of the two technologies, and I'm also really hopeful about it in the future.
Yeah. So hey, to get this future on the roll, right? So, and people love the idea, right? So how can they reach you, connect with you, and learn more on how to make this thing happen?
Yeah, so you can follow Ephemeris on Twitter. It's 0xEPH, Ephemeris Protocol. Messages are open. Like feel free. Anybody from the team is going to contact. If you have, doesn't matter if it's a technical question, doesn't matter if it's a question about tokens, doesn't matter if it's a question, are you into Star Trek or Star Wars? Doesn't matter. It'd be like, just get in touch with us. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be responding as well. So, like this is the best way to get to us. So yeah, feel free.
Awesome. Anyways, we'll definitely share all your details, your contact in the description below. So anyways, it's about that time. We got to go. Y'all be good. Y'all be safe. and we will talk to you soon. Bye for now.